guys. So this video, as you can hear, is going to be in English, but I am still going to be talking about the German language, how to improve your German or how to start learning German. I am going to be giving you about 7 tips, and some of these tips I've seen on YouTube before. Some of them I haven't seen so often, so yeah, I think you will be learning something with this video. So without further ado, let's go. So my first tip is using apps and online courses. I am going to be talking about 3 different options. 2 of them are pretty famous already, but the third one you might have not heard of and is actually my favorite course. And yeah, so keep on watching to know what this one is. So the first course or first app is Duolingo, very famous one, and it does have some weird sentences that sometimes don't make sense at all. But you have to know that the goal with Duolingo, I think, is to learn vocabulary and to learn by repetition. So when you see something after a while, you don't really know why it is the way it is, but you know it's that way and you just repeat and you learn that way. But also what this can cause is a lot of confusion, especially when you're just starting to learn the language and then you see this grammar that you don't really understand how it works. And yeah, it can make the tests kind of difficult when you have to write a sentence and you don't really know how the grammar works. So I would suggest Duolingo for vocabulary. I still use it every now and then. I think it's very useful so that you don't forget specific vocabulary. Duolingo also has a section called the Duolingo Stories, which is actually pretty cool. Unfortunately, they have a limited number of stories. I also haven't checked in a while, but I know that they have a limited number of sets. But I highly recommend that you try Duolingo Stories if you haven't, and that you also check out the website. To check the website on the computer, on the browser on your computer, because they do have a few grammar tips, not a lot, but they are already useful. Now I'm going to be talking about the second app that I've used, which is Babbel, and they actually do have grammar sections and they teach you grammar as you go. And of course the app isn't free. I think they have a free trial, but it's very cheap what you have to pay, and I think it's worth it considering that you're paying so little in order to learn the language. So I think it's worth it. And then my third app, which is also a website, but it works on iPads and phones, whatever, is the Deutsche Welle's Learn German section. So they have multiple courses over there. They also have a bunch of news that you can listen to and learn with them. They play the news slower for you if you're not used to hearing the language. But what I want to recommend, which is my favorite course that I've ever took, not considering actual classes, is the course Nico's Weg. And that is very, very cool because you have very short videos. It's very modern, it's really funny. It's not boring at all. I feel like sometimes online courses or any kind of course can be very boring, and they manage to make this one very interesting. And they teach grammar extremely well. I feel like it's a very well thought of course. It's free. What I find pretty cool is that at the end of each level you get to do a little test. You take this test, and if you pass, they will actually issue a PDF certificate for you. Speaking of Deutsche Welle, it's also a very good idea to check the content that they have online, because they have a bunch of documentary films which are great and very interesting. I think it's called Doc Film, the section that they have with all the documentaries. So you should definitely check that out. And if you have access to cable, maybe not everyone has, but I have the channel on my TV, so I always try to watch some of the news. Or you're not really paying attention, but you're just listening to what people are saying. You start to get used to sounds and some things that people use on their daily life as well, which always helps. So my other tip is also an app. Is an app called TuneIn Radio, and you've probably heard of it before. I think it's pretty famous, and it allows you to listen to radio stations from all over the world. So I use it to, of course, listen to radio stations from Germany, and I try to focus on the radio stations that are about news, and they can actually have pretty interesting content. So the one that I really like to listen to is called NDR Info. They basically just give news. They talk about traffic conditions, about the weather, and sometimes they have really interesting discussions. So, for example, on Christmas time, I remember listening to a show where people were talking about the psychology of giving people presents and all that goes behind it, why we do it, and I thought it was actually pretty damn cool and extremely interested. I am interested in psychology and all that, and I just thought it was very, very nice. And as you can see, that is a way of learning and to improve your listening skills as well, and you do it in a way that's not boring at all. And of course there are other radio stations that play music, but I will just say that you should be careful with music, because in every language, when people write lyrics, they don't really care about grammar. They care more about how it sounds, and they care more about the message that they're putting out there. So they will often have, of course, very informal vocabulary, sometimes curse words, and things that are not going to make a lot of sense grammatically. But I personally really enjoy listening to especially rap, and you can learn something from it, but just keep in mind that you should be careful. When you use something that you heard on a song, you should do some research and see what it means and when it's used. Another tip that I have that unfortunately I cannot really show you guys is that my phone is in German, and it can be a little tricky, confusing at first, because you just want to use your phone and you get frustrated because you don't know where things are. But after a while you do get used to it, and I think this can be very useful because if you do happen to be in a country that speaks German, and for example you rent a car, chances are big that the settings on the car are going to be in German, so you need to at least know how to either change it to English or just use it in German and know what you're doing. That has happened to me, and I was pretty happy to know that I knew what most of the things were and that I could use the navigation and so on. Here's another tip which many people already use, and I just want to reassure you that it is a good idea, as confusing as it can be as well. And this tip is to watch Netflix. So Netflix doesn't have that many shows that are in German, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The most famous one is Dark, and the story is pretty damn confusing when you already know the language that you're using to watch it. It is an extreme complex story, but I still suggest that you try to watch it in German, of course, and with German subtitles, because I think what matters the most in many cases is that you just understand the entire story. You're not going to be understanding every single thing they say. That is pretty difficult, and you shouldn't be focusing on every single thing, because that's going to distract you from what's going on in the story. And if you want to, you can try to watch the show with the language that you know, and then you can rewatch that in German, but I cannot do that. I find it kind of boring. Yeah, whatever works for you, try to watch it once with subtitles in German, because that way you learn how people actually talk in real life. I think that brings a natural tone in speaking the language. And then I have another recommendation, and that's Freud. And it also has kind of a weird story. It's more of a sci-fi thing, but I actually really liked it. And I was very surprised and proud of myself when I could understand the entire story. You really need to give yourself a push. If it scares you, then go on and try it. You know, the worst that's gonna happen is you realize you don't really understand anything and you just switch the subtitles or the audio to another language. But you should definitely give it a try. Another tip that I have, which is more of a traditional way of learning, is to read books. And I have a couple of recommendations here. They are reasonably short books. I think each one from the series I'm going to show has usually 60 pages, which is not a lot because they also contain a bunch of exercises in the middle, so the actual content is not that much. And the first one is a series that's published by Langenscheidt, and they're specialized in learning content and material for people who study German. And Felix und Theo, I believe, is a bit old, but doesn't really matter because there are nice little stories about a detective. I am not going to be showing you how I got it, but I will just say that it is easy to find it. And then the second recommendation that I have is a series that is more up to date, and it's funny as well and has a bunch of interesting subjects and topics. Again, they even talk about refugees and just the life on many different cities that speak German, not only in Germany, which I find very nice. So they have stories that are set in Switzerland, Austria, and other places as well. And it's called Dino lernt Deutsch. You can find it on Amazon /Kindle and also on iBooks, and I am going to show you what it looks like. And this one is actually my favorite book for learning a little bit of German. Here is one of the books from the series. I believe the entire series has about 12 books, and yeah, this one, as you can see, it's set in Vienna. Now I will be talking about my last tip, and that tip, I'm not so sure that it's free. I think it is, and the reason for that is that I used to be a student there. So I used to be a student at Goethe Institute, and so I had access before to their website, but I do think that you can sign up for free. I'm going to be double checking that, and if it's free, I will just write in the description box below. It's a great place for any kind of resource because they have books, they have movies, they have, I think, audiobooks, they have a little bit of everything. And I've watched movies there. Unfortunately, without subtitles, they don't provide German subtitles or even subtitles in English, from what I remember, but you do have access to a bunch of books, ebooks, and also movies and other content, documentaries. I once watched an extremely interesting documentary about the construction of the Philharmonic of Hamburg, the Elfi, and you do end up learning more about the culture and the things that are going on in the country as well. So you should really give this one a try as well. That was the end of the video. I hope you did learn something you didn't know before, that you use one of the things that I recommended to improve or learn German and that it helps you. I will be writing everything down in the description box with all the links that I can get, so you can check that. And if you do have any other questions, don't be shy, just ask me, write in the comments. I'm thinking about making more videos about German language, maybe the culture. Maybe I will also be making another video in German. But yes, this video was way too long already. If you watched everything, thank you. And that's it. See you next time. Bye.